This is kind of a sad case because this guy is just painfully dumb. Not as bad as some that we've looked at, certainly, who I think have something messed up in the wiring upstairs, but he's done it all to himself and he doesn't understand what he's doing wrong. He also seriously overestimates his own capabilities. We've seen that before. So here we go, one last time, into the insanity that is religion, at least from this guy's perspective. Enjoy! Welcome to the last part of Stephen Hackett's absurdly named Christianity is True. And he's done absolutely nothing to prove that anything he believes is actually true. It's just been, but I like it, over and over and over again. But that doesn't mean anything. He also seems to think that he somehow destroyed atheism when he's done absolutely nothing remotely of the sort. This guy seems painfully ignorant of pretty much everything. In fact, I'm starting to doubt that he can even dress himself on his own. And this is not at all uncommon, is it? So let's wrap this up as a prime example of what the religious mind poison actually does to people, because this is nothing to be proud of. Let's get back to it and see what's what.
Whether I look at my own body, I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a biologist, I'm not any of that, but...
And that's the problem. This stuff always comes down to, well, I'm ignorant, but it seems to me. I mean, seriously, talk to these people. It becomes apparent almost immediately how little they actually know about anything. It's like talking to creationists who know nothing except what it says on creationist websites. They take what they believe first, they just assume it has to be right because it would make them feel really bad if it wasn't. They do absolutely no independent research whatsoever. They just take the stuff that people on their site say and assume that it's just got to be right, again because they'd feel really bad if it wasn't, and then they think that they actually understand something. Except they don't. When I was looking at my faith, I didn't just read books by apologists. I went out to see if those apologists were right. I firmly believed then, as I do today, that the truth had nothing at all to fear from honest inquiry. I just found out that Christianity wasn't the truth. I then went on to find out that Islam wasn't the truth. Neither was Hinduism or any other religious belief that I have ever examined. They all fail for the exact same reason. They put their feelings first, and actual facts, not at all. The fastest way out of a fundamentalist belief in a religion is to get an advanced scientific degree, if you're actually doing it honestly. You get a few people who get degrees specifically so they can speak out against them, which strikes me as a complete waste of time. It doesn't make you look any better, and it only costs you a lot of money for nothing. Don't be stupid. Don't do that.
It seems exquisite what's been designed. You can look at the world that we live in.
Look at the trees! I mean, seriously, will the religious ever stop using that? It is not impressive. It just makes you look really stupid. They can't tell the difference between reality and their biased interpretation of reality. But it's simple to back them into a corner on this. How do you know it's designed? Where is your evidence for that? That I believe it. So what? The fact that you believe a thing doesn't make that thing true. Any more than the fact that most people used to believe the earth was flat doesn't mean that it was. Your beliefs are meaningless unless backed up with corroboratory evidence, and you've got none of that, do you? So stop making yourself look stupid. It's not a good look.
The parameters, the earth that we live on, the precise parameters, even down to the size of the moon that goes around our earth.
All of which proves that you are a moron. This is what happens when you just assume that what we see today was designed to be that way. That is untrue. Humanity is not the end goal of reality. We're just what happens when conditions are the way they are. And had they been different, then there never would have been a humanity at all. Something else would have popped up, and whatever that was, if anything had, it would have been something else, and they probably would be asking the same questions. Why is everything so perfectly set up for us? Because you're an idiot. Isn't it wonderful that we had 2 moons that made our life possible? No, you're a moron. He's starting with the faulty preconception up front that he was intended and is special. And he's wrong. And that's hardly a surprise, is it? This is why look at the trees makes them look so stupid. Being impressed by reality doesn't make it special or magical. It just makes you look like a ridiculous moron.
It just seems like there's an awful lot of design. And so you could explain that all by a million chance. Like there was a big bang on the atheist view, and just everything just scattered, and by a millionth of a chance this earth got right in this position, and by another millionth of a chance it collided with an asteroid, and there's so many chances.
There he goes again. He is assuming that this is how it was all supposed to be. For all we know, somewhere out there in the cosmos, there is an alien species looking up at the sky and saying the exact same thing. Isn't it wonderful how everything is perfectly designed just for us? No, not designed. You evolved that way just like we did. If Earth hadn't developed in a way that could give rise to life, then life wouldn't have evolved here. It might have evolved somewhere else. Hell, it might have evolved somewhere else. It might not have evolved at all. We don't know. Which means nobody would be here to talk about it. That's the reality of the situation. It doesn't matter if it makes you happy or not. It matters only if it's true. And by every shred of evidence that we have, that is exactly how this works. He keeps saying, it seems to me, and that means nothing. It means that he's an ignorant imbecile. If you can't come to grips with reality and instead expect that everything is just all about you and your feelings, you've got problems. And if you notice, the religious are usually like that, right? They can't get beyond their own fifis and faith. What a bunch of maroons.
So many improbable things that have led up to this moment that it makes you suspicious that more is going on than just matter and motion.
No, it makes it suspicious that you apparently don't have a clue. These things aren't improbable at all. You are just insisting that only one outcome is acceptable, and that's just stupid. The universe is what it is. It's never going to be anything else. That you are personally, emotionally attached to one specific outcome means absolutely nothing at all. It just means that you're a credulous dumbass. Knock it off. It just makes you look stupid.
Finally, if you've looked at Craig Keener's book, he has a book that's called Miracles. I think it's 2 volumes, filled and documented with cases of miracles.
Nope, not a one. Now, I guess it depends on how you're going to define the word miracle, but if we go with the dictionary definition, a miracle is a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency. Since you can't demonstrate that there are any divine agencies at all, that means absolutely nothing. You also can't demonstrate that it is supernatural, which is really what you're talking about, since there is no evidence that the supernatural exists. Hell, they can't even define what the supernatural means. It's just a word that they use to fill in their own ignorance. Just because we may not have a current natural explanation doesn't mean that one doesn't exist. We just don't know. There are all kinds of things in the past that were once considered supernatural that today we know are just perfectly natural things. You don't just get to appeal to God done it because you really like the idea. The only way to have a miracle in the religious sense is to be able to show that a real, demonstrable, verifiable God actually done it, and they're not even trying to do that. Assertion is not the same as demonstration, and demonstration is what it takes. So if you want to say it was an unusually fortuitous set of circumstances, okay, fine, go right ahead. That happens all the time. Things that are against the odds happen. Spontaneous remission of cancer isn't a miracle. It's something that happens in the natural world. It's not the norm, but it's entirely natural and we can study it. So let's stop playing make-believe and it seems to me, because that just makes you look ridiculous. I mean, you look bad enough as it is. Stop making it worse.
All around the world, there are citations of people having experienced miracles. I personally know people who have had miraculous things happen.
Nope, you don't. You might know people who have claimed miraculous things, but claims are not reality. Claims are just claims. This is where you get people making a complete fool of themselves. But I just know that God was responsible. No, you know nothing remotely of the sort. You believe it, you don't know it. Don't confuse the two. Knowledge requires some demonstrable basis in fact, and you don't have that. You just really wish it was true. It's an interpretation, not an established fact. This is where a lot of people go wrong. This is why it seems to me means absolutely nothing. Nobody cares how things seem to you, since the people who say this are dumbasses. It only matters how things actually are in the real world, and for some of it at least, we just don't know. Assigning an emotionally comforting, arbitrarily derived meaning to it that doesn't make any of it true. And this is why all of this is so ludicrously absurd. I just know God did it means nothing. I had a near-death experience and Jesus spoke to me. That's meaningless. You had a broken brain and it hallucinated something, and you don't know how memory or brains actually work. What you arbitrarily attach to the experience doesn't make your explanation true. I'm not denying that you had an experience. I'm just saying I don't buy your explanation because you can't demonstrate that it actually happened that way. And that makes a lot of people mad. And those people need to grow the hell up.
Now, you don't have to believe every single miracle claim. But the reality is, if just one of those thousands of millions of miracle claims, just one of them are true, the atheistic worldview utterly collapses.
But you haven't proven that any of them are true. As we all know, if is not because. And we're right back to, it seems to me. Yeah, it seems to me that something has to be true. Really? Prove it. Because your say-so means absolutely nothing at all. Just because you really want it to be true, that doesn't mean that it is. Your assertions are entirely empty unless you can provide corroboratory evidence. So let's get to put up or shut up, and they can't do either one. This is just argumentation by bald-ass assertion because they really want it to be true. But that doesn't make it true. Stop making a complete fool of yourself. It's not a good look.
And that finally brings me to the most important miracle, and that is the resurrection of Christ.
You have no evidence for that whatsoever. Now, I am going to do a Am I a Mythicist video that explains a lot of this, but not all, granted. I'm not trying to do an exhaustive dismantling of the resurrection claims, because that's all they are. Claims. We have no evidence whatsoever that there ever was a demonstrable, verifiable Jesus. It's just a claim in a book of mythology written by anonymous non-eyewitnesses and things that people believe on faith, which I think we all know are unreliable at best. If that's the best you can do, and it is, then sorry, but I'm just not impressed. I'm just not. you are going to have to do far better than that. And as I keep saying, they're not even trying, are they? They're just making assertions and expecting everybody else to go along with it. But we're not. Why would we? Now, I'm willing to let him do his thing, but he's not going to do any better than anyone else because he can't. The evidence that would be required to support any of this simply doesn't exist. At least, nobody's found it yet. But I believe it doesn't matter. But I believe that Elvis was taken away by aliens. Yeah, that means nothing either. Your beliefs mean nothing without the demonstrable evidence to back it up. You're just proving what a dumbass you are. And that's all this video has been. Almost 12 minutes of Stephen Hackett showing what a credulous idiot he is on the internet. And that's not something to be proud of. I would be ashamed if I was that dumb, and he really should be too. It's really a shame that he's not.
I think that there's good evidence to say that Jesus died and was buried, appeared to his disciples. There was an empty tomb. These things people have tried to explain these on an atheistic worldview, try to give natural explanations.
You don't have any evidence. You have a story in a book of mythology. That's it. You have nothing that independently corroborates any of it. Not one single aspect of the story can be shown to be true outside of my book says a thing. And I'm sorry if you think that's impressive, but it's not. It absolutely is not. For the sake of argument, will never be good enough. Now, I'm not saying it isn't possible that some real person or persons might have formed the basis for the story. Might, not did. I care about did, not might. We have no evidence to support it either way. I'm not saying there couldn't have been a failed apocalyptic preacher running around Palestine out of which came at least some of the myths. It could have happened, but could isn't did. We don't know anything, and saying that it happened is a complete waste of time until you have the evidence to support it. Remember, for the Trojan War, we didn't even accept that the war actually happened until it was independently corroborated with evidence. It was just a story in a book, and then we found actual evidence that it was real. And the same thing is true here. It is just a story in a book, and until we find actual evidence for Jesus, not the story in the book, not claims made by believers in the story in the book, but actual demonstrable evidence of a real Jesus that we can verify with something more than your say-so and fee-fees, it's going to remain a story in a book. Let's try for some consistency. That lots of people really like the idea doesn't mean anything. We need facts, and at least at the moment, there simply are none.
But they all tend to run into dead ends. So for those reasons, I think that Christianity makes sense of the world that's around me, the world of experience.
Because your epistemic standards are seriously shit. This is just, but I like it, so it's just gotta be true. I bet he isn't applying the same standards to anything else in his life, though, right? He doesn't believe that Muhammad split the moon in half, right? Why not? It says so in a book. He's not taking Hindu myth seriously, is he? This is just, but it makes me feel good. Like an idiot. This is why I can't take any of these people seriously. They are doing everything ass backwards. Instead of starting with the facts and coming to a conclusion based on the evidence that they actually have at hand, like a normal rational person would, they start with the conclusion derived entirely from their feelings, and then scrambling around, they're desperately looking for anything that they can interpret to support their wishful thinking because they just really want it to be true. But it appeals to me. So what? Having $1 trillion in my bank account appeals to me, but that doesn't mean it's there. It's why, almost without exception, the religious hardly ever read anything outside of their theological bubble. They are only looking for confirmation bias. Back when I was trying to establish the truth of my beliefs, I knew that that was an exercise in absurdity. I wanted to know what was really going on. I didn't want to know what they said was going on. I wanted to know the truth. And I was convinced that the truth would confirm my already existing beliefs. It just didn't, though. I at least had the guts to look, but people like this idiot, they can't do it at all. They don't want to know. They're terrified of the truth because they don't want the truth to set them free. And that's why they're so laughably dumb.
But if I became an atheist, I would have to believe that something comes from nothing.
Tell me you're a complete moron without telling me you're a complete moron. Nobody says that but the religious. This is a lie they've been telling for so long that they don't even recognize it as a lie anymore. Get out of your bubble and actually find out if what you believe is true. Because it's not. It's just not. By sitting there making these stupid claims, you're just embarrassing yourself. Knock it off.
I'd have to believe that morality is an illusion.
It's not an illusion, it's a human invention. He's just going, but I don't like it. Like that matters. I don't care what you like. Nobody cares about your comfort. Try reality for once. You don't have to like it, but it's real regardless. This is really, really sad.
I'd have to believe that rationality arises from non-rationality.
You don't understand what rationality is. Now, this is insanely common among the religious. All the stuff that we think we know, it's all based on observation and trial and error. And that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but too bad. He is looking for absolutes, and there aren't any, at least not in this sphere. He's just being intellectually lazy. He wants something that he can just embrace forever and ever and always, something that will never change, so he doesn't have to think about it ever again, because, thinking is hard and he's not that bright. And this is a problem for a lot of people, religious and non-religious alike. But it's still not something to be proud of.
I'd have to believe that order arises from disorder.
You'd have to understand what order is, and most people don't. What he's talking about here is his own personal interpretation of order, which is not order at all. These people will throw out the second law of thermodynamics and completely misunderstand what it means. The most perfectly ordered thermodynamic state that has ever existed is at the moment of the Big Bang. It's all been degrading since then. These people have no clue what the hell thermodynamics are, and that's why they don't really talk about it that way. They'll talk about the second law, forget the thermodynamics part, and then pretend like they've got a clue, which clearly they don't. They're just misusing the whole thing because it sounds good to them. This is why these people look so ludicrously dumb. Because they are.
And I'd have to believe that all of the miracle claims, including the resurrection of Christ, I'd have to believe that all of those, every single one of them without fail, aren't true.
Yes, you'd have to embrace reality. Too bad for you. All he's been doing this entire video is showing what a complete dumbass he is. He can't separate what makes him feel good, what he really wishes was true, from what is actually true. He doesn't care what is demonstrably true. When his faith and his fifis come into conflict with reality, he throws reality away because his emotional comfort means a whole lot more to him than the facts do. And this is true of pretty much all theists, but it's not just them. I had a conversation with a UFO nut not that long ago, and his reason for believing in aliens is because the idea was cool. He really likes the idea, so it just has to be true. All the lights in the sky, they just have to be aliens because the idea appeals to him on an emotional basis. He wants there to be mystery in the world. And that's something I hear all the time from, cryptid believers. They like the idea of unknown animals running around in the woods. Therefore, it's just got to be true. This is pure fantasy, not reality. And far too many people, they just can't get out of their own fantasy mindset. They just really want to believe. And it really is that dumb.
all those things do seem true to me.
And that's your problem. You don't care if they are actually true. You only care if they feel true. Feelings don't matter. It's why conversations with the religious go absolutely nowhere, because they can't get out of that mindset. It's not just the religious that do it, though. Seriously, have you tried to have a rational political discussion online lately? It's all, well, it seems to me, or I feel like this. I don't care. You don't just get to feel your way to reality. Reality is what it is. It doesn't matter what you want to be true. It matters only what is actually true. Because whether you like it or not, reality matters. You don't. Grow up and deal with it.
And it does seem to me that we live in a miraculous world. It doesn't seem to me that something comes from nothing. It doesn't seem like morality is an illusion. It doesn't seem to me that rationality ought to arise from non-rationality. Rather, it seems to me that once I believe Christianity, all these other facets of my experience make sense.
No, you just threw away your rational mind and started believing nonsense because it's a whole lot easier than having to deal with the real world as it actually is. You don't care about reality. You care about comfort. You care about what I want to be happy. You are doing absolutely everything you can to get away from reality because you're terrified of reality. You are an immature little child hiding under the bed, telling yourself comforting stories to keep the monster in the closet at bay. That's how religion works, after all. It's all, but I don't want that to be true, and then just making something else up. And I'm sorry, but you are way too old to be doing that. You are way too old to have not come to grips with the real world. You are way too old to still be hiding under the bed. You have lost all credibility you might have ever had by acting like a complete dumbass. You have just revealed yourself to be an idiot. And that's not a good thing. It's just not.
More than that, I've come to know Jesus as my Savior.
No, you haven't. That's a story you've just made up in your head based on the lies of con men and shysters who are only after your money. You are a sucker, and for some reason you're proud of that fact. You can't understand what you're doing wrong because in your head you can't be wrong. That would just hurt your precious little fee-fees, so you just have to be right, so there. This is really dumb. This is really immature. This is not something that any ostensible adult ought to be proud of. But for some reason, tons of people out there are positively enthusiastic about being utter dipshits. What the hell is wrong with you all? I'd really like to know.
And he's proven himself to me time and time again.
I'd love to know how. Now, I know he can't provide any specific examples in this video. That's the only downside of doing things like this. But I have heard tons of theists making this claim, but it can never be sufficiently substantiated. They're too busy stamping Jesus on all their experiences without doing any of the hard work to show that Jesus was demonstrably involved. But I know it is. No, you don't. You believe it, but your beliefs are not a demonstrable part of reality until you have the evidence to back it up, and you're not even trying to do that. This is just confirmation bias, and that, again, is nothing to be proud of. It just makes you look like a fool. Knock it off. After that, he just gives his email account over and over again, which is silly, and I don't want to give anyone ammunition to spam him, so we're just going to skip over that. Don't go be an asshole to this guy, even though he might deserve it. Honestly, this was not at all impressive. In fact, this was a study on how not to be a rational person. This guy has problems, and I'm willing to bet that more theists are like him than are like me. He's afraid of reality. He wants nothing at all to do with reality. He just wants to be comforted and believe the stuff that he's had forced into his head and that sounds good to him because that seems to be all that he cares about. How stupid is that? I'd say this guy has problems, but They all do. They are all intellectually lazy, emotionally damaged, and rationally bankrupt. They couldn't care less what is actually true. They only want what feels good, and that is positively immature. You need to care about the world that you actually live in, not just make up comforting stories in your head that you really wish were true. At the end of the day, no matter what you believe, you are just wasting your time and likely causing damage to everyone around you because your beliefs inherently impact your actions. You are wasting time running around telling people about your imaginary friends. Grow the hell up, come to grips with the real world, and stop being a dipshit. It's really not that hard. Give it a shot.